The sun was only just rising over the dusty skyline of Kano, but the small, zinc-roofed house in the heart of Gwale was already awake. Inside, the air was heavy with the smell of burning firewood from the neighbors' cooking, mixed with the faint scent of antiseptic that lingered from the night before. On the single bed pushed up against the wall lay Mama Zainab, her once lively face now thin and pale. 2 years earlier, a simple cut on her leg had become infected. With no money for proper treatment, the infection spread, damaging her nerves and leaving her with partial paralysis. She could no longer walk without help, and most days she barely moved at all. In the corner of the room, Aisha, only 10 years old, was kneeling on a raffia mat, carefully folding her school uniform for the day. She glanced at her mother, then at her older brother Ibrahim, who was standing at the doorway, staring out at the dusty street. Ibrahim Musa was just 23, but the hard lines on his face made him look older. Life had not been gentle with him. Once he had been a bright agricultural science student at Bayero University. He loved learning about soil, crops, and irrigation systems. He had even dreamed of starting his own farm that would feed hundreds of people. But dreams were expensive. The year his mother's illness worsened, he dropped out in his second year. There was no question about it. His family needed him. His father had died when Ibrahim was only 13, leaving him as the man of the house. Now, instead of textbooks and lectures, Ibrahim's days were filled with the harsh grind of ferrying passengers in a battered, yellow keke under the hot northern sun. He would start early in the morning, bouncing over potholes, weaving through traffic, shouting Kofar Wambai, Sabongari, and hoping to get enough passengers to make the day worthwhile. Most evenings, he came home with just enough to pay for rent, buy food, and get the pain medication his mother needed. Sometimes there was a little left for Aisha's school books. There was never enough for himself. His shirts were patched at the elbows, his slippers worn thin, and his once neat hair now perpetually dusty from the road. Still, Ibrahim never complained. His friends often teased him at the Kiki Park. "Ah, Ibrahim, see your mates. They are buying motorbikes, wearing fine clothes, chasing fine girls. But you're just working like old man," one of them would say, laughing. Ibrahim would only smile and reply, "Everybody has their own race to run." He didn't tell them that every night, after work, he would sit beside his mother's bed, warm water and towel in hand, massaging her legs until she sighed in relief. He would tell her stories about the day, about funny passengers, about the tomatoes seller who always argued over change. And every night before she slept, he would say the same thing. "One day, Mama, I'll take you to the best hospital. You'll walk again, I promise." She would close her eyes and whisper, "Amin." One hot afternoon, Ibrahim was resting in the shade of a neem tree at the Kiki Park, sipping water from a small plastic sachet. Business had been slow. Suddenly, a shiny black Toyota Prado pulled up, the kind of car that turned heads in the neighborhood. Out stepped a tall man dressed in flowing white agbada, with gold-rimmed glasses that gleamed in the sun. His skin was smooth, his shoes polished, and his smile wide. He walked straight to Ibrahim. "Young man, are you free?" the stranger asked, his voice deep and confident. "Yes, sir," Ibrahim replied, standing quickly. "I need a private charter. Take me round Kano for the day. I'll pay you well." From that moment until late evening, Ibrahim drove the man, who introduced himself as Al-Haji Sule, across the city. He took him to Sabongari Market, to the government offices, to visit a friend in the hospital, and finally to a grand restaurant. Throughout the trip, Al-Haji Sule kept watching Ibrahim. He noticed how the young man greeted elders respectfully, how he slowed down to let pedestrians cross, how he helped an old woman carry her basket of oranges across the road without asking for a tip. He also noticed something rare. Ibrahim refused to overcharge him, even though he could have made triple the fare. When they returned to the park, Al-Haji Sule handed him a crisp bundle of Naira notes and a shiny business card. "If you ever want a better job, call me," he said. "I live in Abuja. There's room for hard-working young men like you." Ibrahim stared at the card after the car drove away. Abuja. The name alone carried a weight of promise. Big roads, good jobs, a chance to start afresh. That night, he showed the card to his mother. She listened quietly, her fingers tracing the letters on the card. "My son, Abuja is far, and this man, you don't know him well. There are good people in the world, But there are also dangerous ones, she warned. I know, Mama, Ibrahim said gently, but we can't live like this forever. You need treatment. Aisha needs a better life. This might be the break we need. Mama Zainab was silent for a long moment, then closed her eyes. May Allah protect you and guide you. Whatever happens, remember who you are and never forget your promise to me. The next week, Ibrahim packed his few belongings into a small bag. 2 shirts, 1 pair of trousers, his mother's old Quran, and the business card. At dawn, he hugged his mother and sister tightly, holding back tears. As he boarded the night bus to Abuja, he looked back one last time and saw his mother waving from the doorway, her eyes shining in the early morning light. He clutched the card in his hand and whispered to himself, I'll make it, Mama, I'll make it for all of us. The bus rumbled forward, leaving the familiar streets of Kano behind. Ahead lay Abuja, and a future he could only imagine. The night bus from Kano to Abuja was cold, the windows rattling against the Harmattan wind. Ibrahim sat by the window, watching the endless stretch of road illuminated by the bus's headlights. Sleep didn't come easily. His mind kept wandering between excitement and fear. Excitement for the unknown possibilities in Abuja, and fear of what could happen if things didn't go as planned. By the time the bus rolled into Jabi Park the next morning, the city was already awake. Abuja looked nothing like Kano. The roads were wide and smooth, lined with tall streetlights. Glassy buildings reflected the morning sun. Expensive cars purred past, their engines barely making a sound. Everything felt bigger, cleaner, and richer. Ibrahim clutched his small bag and the business card tightly, his eyes scanning for a taxi. He dialed the number on the card. Hello? The voice on the other end was deep and unmistakable. Al-Haji Sule? It's Ibrahim Musa. From Kano. You told me to call if I ever came to Abuja. There was a pause, then a warm laugh. Ah, Ibrahim. You made it. Where are you? Jabi Park, sir. Wait there. I'm sending a driver to pick you up. Ah. An hour later, a black Lexus SUV pulled up. The driver, a middle-aged man with a trimmed beard, stepped out and greeted him politely before loading his bag. The ride to Asokoro was like a drive into another world. The streets were lined with bougainvillea and tall palm trees. Massive mansions stood behind high fences, their gates guarded by uniformed security men. It was a far cry from the crowded streets of Gwale. When they arrived, Ibrahim couldn't believe his eyes. Al-Haji Sule's mansion stood like a palace. Tall white pillars, gleaming marble floors visible from the open double doors, and a fountain in the driveway spraying water into the air like a scene from a movie. Al-Haji Sule emerged from the doorway dressed in a flowing blue kaftan. He smiled and embraced Ibrahim like an old friend. Welcome to Abuja, my boy. You must be tired. Come. Ah. For the first week, Ibrahim was treated like a guest. He was given a spacious room with a soft bed, fresh towels, and a bathroom bigger than his entire house in Kano. 3 times a day, meals were served, steaming jollof rice with chicken, fresh fruit juice, soft bread in the morning. At first, Ibrahim felt grateful. But as the days passed, he began to feel uneasy. There was no talk of a job, no clear purpose for his being there. Every time he asked, Al-Haji Sule would wave his hand and say, Relax, Ibrahim. You just got here. We'll sort things out soon. Still, Ibrahim's thoughts kept returning to Kano, to Mama Zainab's medicines, to the rent, to Aisha's school fees. He hadn't come to Abuja to live in comfort while his family struggled. One evening, after dinner, Sul invited him into the study. The room was large and dimly lit, with shelves of books and a wide desk made of dark polished wood. Ibrahim, Sule began, pouring himself a glass of wine. I have a small task for you. He slid an envelope across the desk. Take this to someone at the Grand Orchid Hotel in Woos. 2, Suite 406. You'll find him waiting. It sounded simple enough, but Ibrahim's instincts told him to be cautious. When he arrived at the hotel, the suite door opened to reveal a man lounging on a sofa, surrounded by half-empty bottles of whiskey and 2 women dressed in skimpy clothes. The man barely glanced at the envelope before tossing it onto the table. You're Sul's boy, right? He asked, slurring his words. Yes, sir. He sent me to deliver that. The man laughed, then leaned forward. How about a better deal? You go outside, find me a young girl from the street, fresh, underage, Bring her here, and I'll pay you 50,000 cash. Ibrahim froze, his stomach tightening in disgust. Sir, I can't do that. The man frowned. Why not? It's easy money. I don't sell people, Ibrahim said quietly, turning toward the door. The man's laughter followed him into the hallway, sharp and mocking. Ah! Back at the mansion, Ibrahim returned the envelope untouched. Sool's smile faded when he heard what had happened. You mean you refused? Sool's voice was low but dangerous. Yes, sir. I can't be part of something like that. For a long moment, Sool just stared at him. Then his face hardened. You're useless to me, Ibrahim. I thought you were smart. Pack your things. Leave my house before dawn. Sir, at least help me get back to Kano. But Sool had already turned away. That night, Ibrahim packed his bag in silence. No driver was offered to take him anywhere. No money for transport. Just the cold reality of the streets waiting outside the mansion gates. When the security guard let him out, the night air bit into his skin. He had nowhere to go, no one to call. He started walking. Under the dim yellow glow of the streetlights, the glamour of Abuja faded into shadows. The city was not the dream he had imagined. It was a place where kindness could be a mask and opportunities could be traps. As he wandered, he thought of his mother's last words before he left. Remember who you are. Ah! By dawn, Ibrahim found himself sitting on a wooden bench at the edge of a closed shop in Garki, his bag beside him, his stomach aching with hunger. He had come to Abuja seeking a chance to help his family. Now all he had was a patched shirt, a pair of dusty slippers, and the will to keep going. The streets of Abuja were unforgiving to those without a home. By the second night after being thrown out of Alhaji Sule's mansion, Ibrahim had learned this lesson well. He wandered aimlessly during the day, hoping to find work, and slept wherever his legs gave way at night, under shop canopies, on wooden benches, sometimes on bare concrete. The city lights that looked beautiful from afar now felt cold and distant. The first day, he managed to buy a loaf of bread with the last N200 in his pocket. By the third day, even that was gone. Hunger gnawed at him constantly, making his head light and his steps slow. One afternoon, as he sat near Wu's market, watching cars speed by, a man in a faded brown caftan approached him. He was tall, with a beard peppered with gray, and his hands were blackened from constant work at a charcoal fire. "Brother, you look hungry," the man said, his Hausa accent warm and familiar. Ibrahim tried to smile. "A little, sir." The man nodded toward a small roadside stand, where the sweet smell of roasting corn filled the air. "I'm Bala. I sell corn there. Come and eat." Ibrahim hesitated, but his hunger overpowered his pride. Bala handed him a roasted cob wrapped in newspaper. The first bite was so good that Ibrahim nearly groaned. He ate slowly, savoring every chew. When he was done, Bala handed him a small basket filled with neatly packaged ground nuts. "Here, take these to the traffic light and sell. Bring me the money you make. You can keep something small for yourself." That was how Ibrahim became a ground nut hawker. From morning till evening, he wove between cars stuck in traffic, shouting, "Ground nut! 50 naira!" while dodging impatient drivers and avoiding the traffic wardens. Some customers paid without waiting for change. Others insulted him. A few rolled up their windows in his face. At night, he would return to Bala's kiosk, hand over the day's sales, and curl up on a mat behind the stand. There was no pillow, only a sack of old clothes for support. Mosquitoes feasted on his skin, but at least he wasn't hungry every night. Many people suggested he could make more money if he ran errands. For certain men around the motor parks, errands that involved moving packages, following women to hotels, or helping lure underage girls for quick cash. Ibrahim refused every time. "I can suffer, but I won't sell my soul," he would tell himself. Still, there were nights when he lay awake, listening to his stomach growl, wondering if his stubbornness was worth it. But then he would remember his mother's face, the way she looked at him, with pride, and he knew his answer. One rainy morning, the sky was heavy and gray, and the air smelled of wet earth. Ibrahim wrapped his basket in a nylon bag to keep the ground nuts dry and started walking along the busy Wuzagarki road. The traffic was moving slowly, and water splashed up from the tires of passing cars. That was when he saw it, a black car parked at an odd angle by the roadside. its front door swinging open. Curious, he stepped closer. In the ditch beside the car, his eyes caught a shocking sight. A man half submerged in muddy water, his hands and feet tied, his mouth sealed with duct tape. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead. For a split second, fear rooted Ibrahim to the spot. What if this was some kind of trap? What if the attackers were nearby? But the man's body jerked weakly, and Ibrahim knew he couldn't walk away. Without another thought, he dropped his basket and jumped into the ditch. The mud swallowed his legs, pulling at his trousers. But he fought against it, reaching for the man. "It's okay, sir. I'll get you out," he shouted, though the man could only make muffled sounds through the tape. Ibrahim hoisted him over his shoulder, the man's weight nearly knocking him down. Mud and water soaked his clothes. He climbed out of the ditch and waved frantically at the passing cars, but most drivers sped away. Finally, an Okada rider stopped. Ibrahim begged him, promising to pay later. The rider hesitated but agreed when he saw the man's condition. They rode to the nearest hospital, Ibrahim holding the injured man steady on the bike. At the hospital gate, the security guards helped carry him inside. But at the reception, the nurse shook her head. "Deposit first, and 50,000 before we can treat him." "I don't have that kind of money," Ibrahim said, panic rising in his chest. He dug into his pocket and poured out everything he had. Just N850 in crumpled notes and coins. "Please, just start." "He will die if you wait." The nurse hesitated, then called the doctor. The doctor took one look and ordered them to bring the man to the emergency room. Minutes later, the doctor returned with bad news. "He has lost a lot of blood. We need an urgent transfusion. His blood type is O+. "I'm O+, Ibrahim said without hesitation. "Take mine." The doctor stared at him. "Are you sure? You look weak yourself." "I'm sure. Please, hurry." The transfusion began. Ibrahim lay on a narrow bed, watching the dark red blood flow from his arm into the bag. His stomach twisted from hunger, but he ignored it. Halfway through, the room began to spin. His vision blurred and his body felt light, almost floating. The doctor's voice became distant. "Stay with us, young man." By the time the transfusion was complete, Ibrahim had no strength left. Darkness swept over him and he collapsed. When he woke, the room was quiet. A thin blanket covered him, and a faint smell of antiseptic filled the air. He tried to sit up, but his body ached. From across the room, a voice spoke. "So you're awake?" Ibrahim turned and saw the man he had rescued, now clean, dressed in a hospital gown, and sitting in a chair. The bandage on his forehead was fresh, and the duct tape marks had faded. "You saved my life," the man said quietly. "They told me you gave your blood. Who does that for a stranger?" Ibrahim smiled weakly. "I couldn't walk away. Even a stranger's life is worth saving." The man studied him for a moment, his eyes narrowing with curiosity. "Do you know who I am?" Ibrahim shook his head. "My name is Malam Danjuma," the man said slowly. "CEO of Danjuma Agro Processing, one of the biggest agricultural companies in this country, and apparently one of the richest men in northern Nigeria." Ibrahim's eyes widened, but he said nothing. "I was kidnapped by some former employees. They wanted ransom. When they realized they wouldn't get it, they left me in that ditch to die. You, young man, changed that." The room fell silent. Malam Danjuma leaned forward. "You gave me my life. Now I think it's time I give you yours back." The next morning, Ibrahim was discharged from the hospital, but not in the way he expected. Instead of being left on the streets again, Malam Danjuma's personal driver arrived in a black Mercedes SUV to take him away. The ride through Abuja felt surreal. Just 2 days ago, Ibrahim had been hawking groundnuts under the sun. Mud still caked on his trousers from the ditch. Now he sat in the plush back seat of a luxury car, the cool air conditioning brushing his face. When they turned into Maitama, Ibrahim's eyes widened. The houses here made Alhaji Sule's mansion look modest. Tall white walls, glittering gates, manicured gardens. Wealth on a scale he had never imagined. The SUV stopped in front of a sprawling, cream-colored mansion with a marble staircase leading up to the front doors. Uniformed security guards saluted as the car passed. Inside, the house smelled faintly of lavender and polished wood. The floors shone like glass and the ceiling soared high above his head. A young housekeeper led him to a guest suite, a room with a bed so large it could fit 3 people, a television bigger than the one in the local barbershop back home, and a bathroom lined with shining tiles and a walk-in shower. "Please rest," she said with a smile. "Malam will see you later." For the first time in months, Ibrahim showered in warm water. He stood under the spray for nearly 20 minutes, watching the dirt swirl down the drain, as if it could wash away the struggles of the past weeks. When he emerged, dressed in fresh clothes laid out for him, a crisp white caftan and leather slippers, lunch was waiting in the dining hall. A spread of jollof rice, suya, fried plantain, and chilled mango juice filled the table. After the meal, Malam Danjuma joined him. Today, the man looked even healthier, his eyes bright, his voice strong. "Ibrahim," he began, "yesterday I told you my name and what happened to me. But I didn't tell you why I think Allah sent you to me." He leaned back in his chair, studying Ibrahim's face. "I have met many young men in this country. Most would have left me in that ditch or tried to profit from my weakness, but you gave everything you had, even your blood, for someone you didn't know. That kind of heart is rare." Ibrahim lowered his eyes. "I only did what was right." "That," Danjuma said, "is why I will do something for you in return." "First, your mother? You said she is sick?" "Yes, sir. She hasn't walked properly in 2 years. The doctors in Kano said we need to take her abroad for treatment, but..." He trailed off. "Say no more." Danjuma stood. "I will arrange for her to be flown to Egypt next week. The best specialists will treat her. Cost is not an issue." Ibrahim's breath caught in his throat. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Say nothing yet," Danjuma replied. "There is more. You said you studied agricultural science?" "Yes, sir. But I had to drop out in my 2nd year to take care of my family." Danjuma smiled. "Perfect. I own one of the largest agro-processing companies in Nigeria. I am giving you N50 million to start your own agricultural business. Not a loan, a gift. I will also give you a brand new keke, registered in your name, so you always have a means to earn while you build your business." Ibrahim was speechless. His mind raced, his mother walking again, Aisha in a good school, his own farm providing jobs for others. It felt like a dream too good to be real. "Why me?" he finally asked. "Because kindness deserves to be rewarded," Danjuma said simply. "And because I want you to remember that what you did for me is the kind of courage this country needs." The days that followed moved quickly. A medical team was sent to Kano to prepare Mama Zainab for travel. When Ibrahim called to tell her, she cried so hard she could barely speak. Aisha's voice rang with excitement in the background. A week later, Ibrahim stood at Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, watching his mother board a private, jet-bound for Cairo. Danjuma had insisted on sending her in comfort, with a nurse to accompany her. 3 months later, she returned, walking unaided. The day she stepped off the plane at Malam Aminu Kano International Airport, Aisha screamed and ran into her arms. Ibrahim followed, tears streaming down his face as he embraced her. The woman who had once been trapped in bed now stood tall, her steps steady. "My son," she whispered, holding his face in her hands. "You kept your promise." Back in Kano, life transformed completely. Ibrahim's new agricultural business, Musa Agro Ventures, started with a small team but grew rapidly. They processed maize, rice, and groundnuts for sale, and soon employed over 30 young men and women from the community. Farmers who once struggled to sell their produce now had a steady buyer. The brand new keke Danjuma had given him became both a symbol and a backup source of income, though Ibrahim rarely needed to drive it. His focus was on building the business and mentoring others. Aisha was enrolled in one of the best schools in Kano, wearing a neat uniform and carrying brand new textbooks. Mama Zainab, now fully mobile, became the heart of the home again, cooking her famous tuwo shinkafa and telling stories in the evenings. Months later, a reporter from a local newspaper came to interview Ibrahim about his sudden success. "Some say you were lucky," the reporter remarked. "What do you think?" Ibrahim smiled. "Kindness is never a waste. Even when you have nothing, you can still give your heart. What happened to me wasn't luck. It was Allah's way of showing that dignity and compassion open doors. No amount of scheming ever could." On the anniversary of his rescue of Malam Danjuma, Ibrahim organized a community event in Gwale. He invited young people to share their own acts of kindness, no matter how small. Danjuma attended as the guest of honor, and together they launched a scholarship fund for underprivileged students in Kano. As the sun set over the crowd that day, Ibrahim stood beside his mother, his heart full. The boy who once patched his only shirt and slept under mosquito-filled canopies was now a man who could change the lives of others, and all because on a rainy morning he chose not to walk away.